waiting for Facebook to do its thing and for me to show up. Just try it again. Then that way I can see your comments. There we go. Okay, let's get started with today's training, which is all things exercise today. So of course, when I do these trainings, it's meant to take like what maybe feels like overwhelming, complicated, too much, don't know what to do with it, don't know where to start kind of information, and then make it feel kind of like, oh, it makes sense. You get a sense of relief from it, and then leaving you with some action steps that you can take. What do you do with the information? Because it's not just about hoarding information. In fact, if you're just listening to the trainings and you have no intention or don't do anything with them, what happens is you widen the gap between I know what to do, I just don't do it. And that becomes the really, really frustrating part. So we always want to challenge ourselves when we are listening to a training like this, that we take pieces of it and we start implementing them, the next day or that very day. It might not be all of the pieces, but some of the pieces as well. And if you do that with every training, then you start to put a lot of pieces together that start to build momentum, build your consistency, and therefore you start to see better results as a result of taking action on it too. Now, I always like knowing who is here live or who is here on the replay. Basically, who are the imperfect action takers that are giving this a listen. And so if you are here live, you have an opportunity to ask questions, but do drop into the comments and say, hey. But if you're here on the replay, same thing. Come into the comments and just let me know, like, hey, I did listen to this. And I always love it if you take it a step further and just tell me, what are you going to do as a result of listening to today's training? Now, today's training is part one. There is a part two that'll happen in a couple weeks' time, where we're going to go into, now that you know this, what do you do with it kind of thing. So today we're looking at you're working out. So why isn't your body changing? So again, this is part one of two. Maybe you do the workouts, you do the walks. You've made it a priority to kind of, get in some shape in some sort of form. It feels like you're doing something. It makes you feel good. Maybe you got a good routine. It's your me time. In the same sense, you also want to see some sort of change, right? In how you maybe feel in your clothes or maybe in your body or on the scale or with your strength. You're putting in the time. Hi, Jen. But on the other side of things, it's not adding up. So this is kind of where you're at. So when I first start talking to women, I either have women who are doing the workouts, so they're moving things consistently. They have ebbs and flows with it, or but generally so I'm either talking to women who are like, I'm doing this thing consistently, I'm doing the movement thing, the workout thing consistently, or I'm talking to the women who have the ebbs and flows. They're all in, they're all out. They're doing more of it and then none of it. They're going big or they're mostly going home. So I don't need to know from whoever's listening to this on the live or the replay, which camp do you fall in? Are you the kind of person who has been pretty consistent with your routine in some shape or form? I just got off a call with a client, and she said, I'm not always getting my workouts in, but I am getting some sort of movement every single day, which is a huge thing from where she was at, because where she was at was in this camp of all or nothing. So regardless of the camp, today's training is broken into two parts. Whether you are or aren't, it's how to get things to add up, how to get the results you want from the work you're doing, essentially the workouts that you're doing. So again, it is broken up into two parts, and today's part one, it's meant to get you to the I see, and then part two will get you into the nuances, the details of putting it all together. Sound good? So tell me again if you're here live, just like Jen did, or if you're on the replay, just drop the word live or replay. So okay, and of course, if there are going to be women who are listening to these trainings and they take action, of course, right away, and there are going to be others who are going to listen and don't take action. And again, that's going to create the gap between knowing and doing, and that's where a lot of the frustration kind of lands. And so the goal would be to get you to take some sort of imperfect, consistent action as a result of today's training. So I thought for today's training, I would start with 4 scenarios, essentially 4 common things I see with women what that women do and why it doesn't add up the way you maybe want to look and feel. As I go through them, I want you to make some kind of like mental notes which resemble where you're at, the trap you fall into. Because once we can identify that, then we can start to shift out of, doing the same into, what do I do now? I hope that makes sense for you. So just take some mental notes, and we're going to start off with scenario number one, which is the most common one that I hear is you're chasing, you might not be saying it this way, but this is how I'm in receiving it after coaching women for 17 years. You're chasing effort, not adaptation. So what does that mean? Because that's kind of like coach speak, right? So most women were taught to measure workouts by, how much you sweat. So if you did a really good sweat session, then that was a really good workout. If you feel really like tapped out during, like you're like doubting whether or not you can continue, or maybe afterwards you're feeling really exhausted, or you look down your watch and you're like, wow, my heartbeat is really high. Like I just had a client, she's like, I'm working too hard, my heart is at 177. Or you're looking at your watch and you're saying how your calories burned, but your body doesn't change from being tired or from fatigue is not the goal. Stimulus is. So we're going to get into what that means. It changes from being challenged. There's basically a difference. Now I get it. Sweating, heart rate, feeling tired, getting to the calorie burn is a challenge, but that is not the same way as that's not what we're talking about when it comes to stimulus or how I'm going to describe challenge. So when I'm saying challenge, I'm describing a need for the body to kind of adapt. So let me help you make sense of this. So you walk 10,000 steps daily. Maybe you're a nurse, you work in a school, you deliver mail. It's easy to get the 10,000 steps. It's kind of your normal. This doesn't challenge the body anymore. Maybe it did when you first started your job because you went from sedentary to then moving, but it doesn't now. The metabolism knows that it's your cadence and it doesn't have to do anything different. No adaptation is needed. You only have one set of dumbbells, let's say at home. You work out at home. You have been using the same dumbbells at home for years. No adaptation is needed. You run 5 kilometers regularly. You have for years. It was adaptation at first, but since it's been happening for years, no adaptation is needed. Or you do a random workout off YouTube or your Peloton app, not a progressive workout program. It makes you sweat and your watch tells you you burned calories, but no adaptation is needed. This is why people who move all day or have active jobs or do active things can all still have different body compositions. So let's see if this analogy helps you make better sense of it. It's kind of like getting $50 off your paycheck for years and you're kind of putting that in towards your RSP contribution. It feels really easy now, but if you were to bump that up to 150, there needs to be more effort to rearrange things to make it happen. That's the adaptation we're talking about. $50, you've been doing it for years. It feels like, yeah, no sweat off my paycheck. I don't really see the difference. It's an automatic thing. But if I were to, double that, to 150 or triple that, whatever the math is, then you would start to notice that a little bit different. So you'd have to like rearrange things. That's what we're talking about when we're talking about challenge. We're talking about adaptation. We're talking about stimulus in your workouts. So even though you might be sweating, calorie burned, or you're feeling exhausted or tapped out, it doesn't necessarily mean you're in this category where there's stimulus, adaptation, or a challenge. I hope that makes sense, and give me a thumbs up if you're listening to this, if that's making sense. Adaptation is your body's way of saying, I've seen this before, I don't need to change for it anymore. Your body is built to keep things really efficient. So when you do something new or harder, your body goes, okay, we need to get better at this. Or so it starts to build more muscle or get stronger or improve coordination or use energy better. That's adaptation. This is where things get really misunderstood. So high reps, pulsing, burning, that's fatigue. Now you can get to a stimulus with high reps. You can get to a stimulus with, pulses in your squats and things like that, or with a burning, but it's just understanding that those things aren't necessarily what it means to challenge yourself or to create the stimulus in your workouts. It's the actual pushing yourself past the what feels common, normal, or average for you. It's pushing past that point. So we're not confusing fatigue with creating a stimulus. Failure is different. Failure is I cannot do another rep with good form. That's where your body is forced to adapt. Most women never get there. So I'll give you an example. is you see your program says you need to do 10 reps. And so you think about what's the weight I can use for 10 reps versus thinking what's the heaviest weight I can lift, even if I can't lift with 10 reps. As a coach, it's better for you not to get to 10 reps and lift heavier than it is to think about I'll hold back on some weight because I'm not confident I can get through the 10 reps. It doesn't mean to keep changing up your workouts either. Muscle confusion was a marketing term that means really diddly squat, but it does have you asking, am I doing it in a way that my body needs to adapt? Maybe I slow down the reps because it creates more tension in the muscle. Maybe I go faster. Maybe I change my workout splits. Maybe I change up my rests or my tempo or my set order, or I'm lifting heavier or lifting closer to your upper limit, or I'm going deeper, like in your squats, for example, or maybe I'm changing my speed of when I'm walking, I'm running further, I'm running faster. That's all progression. Those are all different ways that you can change up your workouts without needing new workouts or different workouts. So you keep showing up, you keep doing the work, but nothing changes. A simple way to think about it is if your workout feels the same, your body will stay the same. So a common belief is I need new workouts, and that isn't always the case. But another belief is that you need to do more workouts to get better results. I'm here to tell you not necessarily. I mean, if you're doing none, then more is better. But if you're inconsistent or consistency is number one if you're inconsistent. So you don't go from being inconsistent to then saying I'm going to do 5 or 6 days a week. You go from inconsistent to then, okay, what's the lowest common denominator that I can do? For some of my clients that's 2, for some of my clients that's 3. Then when you get consistent at that, before we look at okay, jumping up to 4 or 5, we look at how can I create the stimulus within those workouts before adding more. So it feels logical to add in more, especially if the scale isn't moving like you want it to. Here's what I want to be clear. Don't confuse doing a lot with what actually works. It's adaptation, progression, not more. Not more for the sake of more. Work smarter, not harder, is the saying, right? Your body doesn't respond to how much you do. It responds to whether it has a reason to change. You might be thinking, okay, but I'm still doing something that has to count for something. And yes, it does, right? Doing something is better than actually doing nothing. If your goal is, to move your body, if your goal is maybe to clear your mind or build the habit. For some, it's not only a mood boost, but it's good for digestion, it's good for muscle and joint stiffness, for aches, then what you're doing works. But here's where we need to be really honest. If your goal is to change how your body looks, to build strength, to seeing progress, then doing something is not enough. It's not the same. Those two things don't match up because those are two different goals and they require two different approaches. So you don't get to say, I just want to do something and then get frustrated that your body isn't changing. You have to decide, am I doing this to check a box or am I doing this to create a result? Because if it's about doing something, then the win is I showed up and that's enough. But if it's about results, then it has to become about how you're training, how you're progressing, and whether your body actually has a reason to change. Does that make sense? So if this is making sense, does this sound like you? Did I just describe what was happening for you? Like, let me know in the comments, particularly if you're live, because I'll certainly address it, is this resonating for you? Does this sound like you? Have you been confusing the two things together? Have you been like, hey, my goal is just to move more, but I've been expecting these results and those two, I'm seeing now how those two things don't match up. So that brings us to the end of scenario number 1. Love to hear from you in the comments. Scenario number 2 is you're training like your old body, not like your current one. So when you were when you weren't in perimenopause and menopause, obviously you were younger, right? Perhaps you used to run 5 or 10 Ks or even marathons, and perhaps you used to do HIIT classes. So the tendency is to go back to what you used to do. It worked then, and you don't, it worked then. And so you're like, well, why wouldn't it work now? And also it's like when you feel really overwhelmed or confused by what to do, your default is to go back to what is familiar or what you feel like worked for you. What we're forgetting is life is different. Sleep has shifted, energy has too, stress is hitting different, life is busier, right? But maybe also, there's digestion. Digestion is maybe different. Hormones definitely are different. And your joints feel stiff when you get out of bed and you have more aches and pains, and recovery just is a little bit different. It's not the same, right? So the resistance is not doing what your body needs now. Sure, it needs a push. It needs that adaptation that we talked about, but it also needs to not add more more load to kind of your heaping plate, like more stress. Because yes, workouts are a stressor. It needs to be efficient and effective, which isn't the same as sweating or heart rate or calorie burn or needing long workouts. And it isn't the same as what it used to be. Does that make sense? I feel like I just like said a lot and I didn't really breathe there. So let me know if this is making sense to you. But your body doesn't respond, in a straight line like it did or like it used to, right? You generally like, for example, I just went through a more intense training session to get ready for, high rocks, and it was like my hunger was way more intense. My cravings were way more intense, right? And then, recovery looks different after those workouts, right? Maybe you have less energy or more inflammation, and definitely there are changes in digestion. So that weight has shifted, and it's shifted mostly around your middle too. There's maybe less focus or less clarity. This is a way to meet your body where it's at and get the results instead of trying to like put a square peg in a round hole, for example. Now, this is where I want to be really clear. Cardio, we're going to go there because there are some mixed messages about that on social media when it comes to women in perimenopause and menopause. Cardio is important. Intervals have a place. It all has its place. And trainings have seasons. So I definitely went through, last year in the summer, I did more trainings for a half marathon. This year when I was training for high rocks, it was like more of, intervals or hit workouts and with weight training mixed in. So we definitely have different training seasons depending on where we're at, right? Sometimes myself and clients I coach are doing more cardio. Maybe they're doing, a couch to 5K, and sometimes they're doing more weights because they want to learn it or they enjoy it and they want to prioritize like preserving and building that muscle. So when you look at your workouts, the movements, do you have the ratio that fits your goal? Do I have the right balance of weights to maybe intervals to maybe cardio? Do I have the right ratio of putting in steps or going for walks to weights in comparison to the goals that I have? If your workout calendar is mostly all running or steady state steady state cardio, but your goal is number one, adaptation, and you have been running for a long time, guess what? It's not happening. And if your goal is muscle building or preservation, it's not happening, especially because those two things don't match together. When cardio becomes your main fat loss strategy in perimenopause or menopause, your body's already more sensitive to stress. Too much cardio adds more stress, which can increase your hunger, your cravings, and make your body hold on to weight instead of letting it go. So you end up doing more and then generally like getting less back. So before we head into scenario 3, I want you to think about it. Are you moving in a way that meets your body where it's at or where it used to be? Are you moving in a way that says this is how I should do it versus asking what would work best for me to stay consistent, enjoy it, not add stress to my body, and helps me meet the goal of adaptation because I have these goals to meet? Does that make sense? I hope that you can, each of these scenarios I've asked you already, before we go into scenario 3, I've asked you a couple of questions to help you reflect, and it's going to set us up nicely for training number 2 when we talk about now what, right? And so what I do want you to spend some time is reflecting on those questions and really thinking about them, because when you answer them honestly and reflectively, then you can then start to see where the gaps are or why things aren't adding up for you. Scenario number 3 is you're confusing movement with training. So this one really matters. Walking is movement. It's, steps is movement. Cleaning is movement. Yard work is movement. Running errands is movement. Training is different. So training has an intention, it has a structure, and has progression. So most women are moving a lot. I would say some women are not moving a lot. They have a sedentary desk where they're sitting at a desk for a really long time, and they're not actively taking breaks to get up or being intentional about their movement or exercise. But a lot of women are actually moving a lot, but not actually training in a way that builds anything like muscle. The progress you want to see, the physical changes, or to see other changes outside of your body, like I mentioned. Now, don't get me wrong, we all benefit from moving more, right? But like I said in scenario 1, the body gets used to that and knows what to do with that and says, no challenge here. It's, why do mail carriers come in all different shapes and sizes? Is because the body adapts and it says, okay, I've adapted to this. I know that this is what's going to happen. It's nothing else is needed here, right? So, what do I mean by training with intention? You're not just showing up and doing something. You know what the goal of the workout is. Is it strength? Is it building muscle? Is it improving a movement pattern? You're not bouncing from random exercises. You're executing with purpose. You aren't stopping too early, thinking of it like a gas tank. You aren't stopping just before the gas light comes on, or even if it does, you're trying to go a little bit past that light coming on as well. So that's what I mean when I say like training with intention is you really have to like, so if I'm doing an endurance run, what is my intention? Well, it's not building muscle. If I'm doing lifting weights, if my goal is building muscles, then I have to create that adaptation. So you have to really look at what do I want as a result of this workout today, and making sure that whatever you're putting into your plan matches the outcome that you want, right? And that's not the same as just showing up. Showing up doesn't mean that you're going to build muscle, or that you're going to build strength, or that you're going to get faster or whatever. Showing up is just building the muscle of consistency of showing up, but we have to just to make sure that we align our goals with that. If I'm just showing up, the goal is just to be consistent. If I want to train with intention, then we're making sure, is it going towards building my endurance? Is it going towards building my strength, building muscle, that sort of thing? Now, training with structure, you're not guessing your workouts. You're not pulling something random off YouTube or your app every day. There's a plan and there's a flow. Your workouts are connected to each other, not just a bunch of one-off sessions that feel really hard but don't build anything over time. Particularly if you're dealing with an injury, you don't then be like, okay, none of these exercises work. I'm just going to do this, 3 days a week or 4 days a week. You look at, okay, how do I try and balance out my workout so I have all of the different muscle groups included at some point throughout the week, right? So otherwise you're just creating imbalances in some other part of your body as a way to protect the injury that you're having. So training with structure is just really like, that's why like when you go on Beachbody or whatever, it's like 8 weeks, 6 weeks, 12-week programs. That's why when you pick a Peloton program, they're structured at 6, 8, 12 weeks. That's how I coach clients as well. But what happens is we just randomly pick ones that were like, I'm out of time, or I don't want to think about it, so I'll pick one that I've done. I'll pick one that's easy. I'll pick one that's familiar, and you're constantly picking random ones to try. And then you're training with progression. Like I said in scenario one, something is changing over time. Maybe it's the weights are going up. Maybe the reps have improved. You can do more reps. You can do them slower. You have more control. Your rest is more intentional. You're asking your body to do more than it did before. That's the reason it will adapt. That's the only reason it will adapt. If nothing changes, nothing changes. That's the difference. This is why when I coach women, we have movement goals and we have training goals, right? So think about it like this. Movement is like brushing your teeth. Exercise and training is like going to the dentist. You do need both, but we can agree that they have different purposes and intention. So let's separate something that gets mixed up all the time is burning calories versus changing your body. They aren't the same thing. Burning calories is temporary. You do the workout, you burn calories, and then it's done. Your body goes right back to the baseline. Nothing about it has to change long term. Changing your body is different. That requires your body to adapt, to build muscle, to get stronger, to become more efficient, to actually look and feel different, right? And that only happens when your body is given a reason to change. And don't get this wrong, it's still burning calories, but the approach or the maybe intention is different. And this is where most women get stuck. They chase the calorie burn or their watch thinking this must mean it's working, but your body doesn't care how many calories you burned. It responds to whether it was challenged in a way that requires change. So if your workouts are only focused on burning calories, you'll stay in a loop of burn, recover, repeat without ever actually building anything. The other area women get stuck in is when they choose what they choose to train. They don't like the back of they don't like the back of their arms, so they do triceps. They don't like their belly, so they do core. They don't like their legs, so they add in abductors, adductors, inner thigh. And listen, that's not wrong. The exercises have their place, but here's the problem. You're building your workouts around what you don't like instead of what actually creates change. because when fat loss is the goal, focusing most of your time on those small muscle groups, it doesn't give your body enough of a reason to change. Your body responds more when you train bigger muscle groups, particularly if you're at the beginning of your phase or your journey and you have a lot more weight to lose. More total muscle at once and movements that require more effort and coordination. So think squats, deadlifts, rows, presses, lunges. These demand more from your body, which means more muscles are involved, more energy is used, more adaptation is required. Those smaller exercises like biceps, triceps, calves, abductors, adductors, even things like leg extensions, they're not useless, but they're not the main driver either. Think about them like the supporting actress, not the lead actress, for example. Yeah. And so if most of your workout looks like arms, abs, small isolated movements, you might feel the burn, but you're not creating enough overall demand for your body to actually change. Think of it like this: the big movements are the meal, the smaller ones are the side dish, and you don't build a plate around the side dish. So, yes, include those exercises, but they should make up a smaller portion of your workout, not the bulk of it. If most of your workout is focused on problem areas, you're likely missing the pieces that actually change your body. So for scenario number 3, it's really about separating movement and exercises and knowing what purpose they actually serve. So the question back to you is, do you have more of one or the other? Have you been lumping the two together, for example? So that's a question under scenario 3 that I'd like you to spend time reflecting on, and it's going to set us up nicely for training number part 2. So this is really what I help coaching clients do and see: have movement goals and set up the right training and exercise plans to help them meet their goals, and of course the high level accountability behind it. So scenario number 4 is you're canceling your workouts outside the gym. Now listen up to this one. You're canceling your workouts outside of the gym. So what the heck does that mean, right? This is where kind of most of the damage in air quotes is happening. It's not during the workouts, it's after. You train hard, then you don't eat enough, or you skip meals, or you live on caffeine, or you sleep like garbage, or you stay in stress mode all day, or you overeat because you burn calories, you earned it, you deserve it. You use your workouts to justify foods you wouldn't normally eat, and you swing between under eating and overeating. So here's what I want women to know. You think work happened in the gym, and some of it did, but most of it is done with how you fuel your body. When it is not fueled properly or underfueled, or even not eating balance, then it's going to kind of affect your workouts. In some way you'll feel and see, and in some other ways it's going to be undetected, right? Just in that overall feeling. So why isn't this, it's going to be like undetected in that, like, why didn't this work kind of way. Does that make sense? And so let's call out a couple of beliefs here. So the belief is I burn calories, so why would I eat back calories? Your workout did not just burn energy, it also asked something of your body. So it asked your muscles to work harder, it asked your nervous system to show up, it asked your body to repair, rebuild, and recover. That takes food. So when you work out hard and then you barely eat, you skip meals, or you try to save calories, your body doesn't see that as a good thing, but the opposite. It sees a lot of output with not enough coming in. And when that keeps happening, your body starts getting louder. Maybe that's more hunger, more cravings, lower energy, more soreness, less strength, less desire to train, more mental dialogue that's got you thinking about food. Your body will always find a way to get what it needs. The other common belief is I burn 500 calories, therefore I have room for 500 calories in food. No, and let me explain why. Okay, is the goal to train to eat, or is the goal to change your body? Get clear on the goal here. If you're like, okay, I'm working out 500 calories so I can eat 500 calories, then we then aren't looking to build muscle or change the way we look, right? We're not looking at the scale to reflect that differently at all. If your goal is, to change the way your body eats, then body looks, then that's a different type of goal. Plus, if you use exercise to justify food, what kind of a relationship are you building? Food needs to be earned, just like you can only rest when everything is done and everyone is taken care of, then it's your turn. Like, how does that work for you, right? So not to mention, we assume 500 calories burned for 500 calories eaten is the same thing. They have the same effect, and this just isn't the case. 500 calories can impact water retention, inflammation, blood sugars, digestion. I could go on depending on what you're eating. There's this other belief too that the work is done in the gym. The gym is the smallest part of this. 30 to 60 minutes, 3 to 5 times per week, that's it. What about the other 23 hours or whatever of the day, right? That's where the results are either supported or undone. You can't out train under eating, poor sleep, high stress, inconsistent habits, even if you're eating healthy, because healthy doesn't mean enough or even too much. It doesn't mean balance. It doesn't mean supportive for your workouts. That's where most women miss. So the bottom line is you could be putting effort into the gym, but your day-to-day life isn't supporting it. So it doesn't show, right? So the point of today's training is to help you see where your effort is leaking and why it's not adding up. And specifically, we're looking at the workouts, right? Because there are other leaks, like I mentioned, like digestion, inflammation, sleep, stress, and your nutrition and all that, where there are other leaks. Right now, we're just looking at exercise. The goal again was to see where your effort is leaking and why it's not adding up. So as you reflect and you kind of prepare for part two, you need to ask yourself, which of the four scenarios am I actually stuck in? Which one? And you could be stuck in more than one. And I would love for you to drop it into the comments and tell me which scenario you're stuck in. And I don't want you to pick, which one sounds nice or sounds like good, but I want you to pick that actually is true for you. And if you're being honest, I want you to look at, are you expecting results from effort that isn't asking your body to change? And what are you doing after your workouts that's canceling out what you're doing in your workouts? Like we talked about the food piece and all of those different pieces. So it does require you to be honest. That's where the kind of the shift starts. Be on, and that's where we want to do this work so that we can set ourselves up to then figure out, okay, so now what do I do? Because it's really going to help you hone in on what to focus on. So if in part two, if I'm going to be talking about scenario number 3, but only scenario number 1 is relative to you, you want to know that scenario number 1 is relative so that you can apply the right strategies to you as part of training number 2. So this is where most women stay stuck. They keep adjusting effort instead of fixing what actually is not working. So they waste time, they waste energy, and a lot of mental space and guessing everything. What I do is make this efficient. As coach, I make this efficient. You understand what matters, what doesn't, and how to make it all work together. The training, the nutrition, the stress, the recovery, the real life. So these trainings give you awareness. They help you connect some dots, but applying this consistently while everything else in life is happening, well, that's a different story, right? That's where most women stall. That's where coaching comes in. It closes the gap between, knowing and actually doing it. And if you want to stop guessing and start seeing things kind of add up, then you know what? Why not send me a message? We'll start a conversation. So don't forget that this is part 1 of 2 trainings. We're going to dig in a little bit more on part 2. But for right now, you really need to go back to the 4 different scenarios that I gave you. See which one is holding the number 1 spot for you. Ask yourself the question that I asked of you and do that homework first so that when we get to the next training, you actually know which area to kind of focus on and what to apply from all of the strategies that I give you. If you have any questions, of course, use the comment space to ask them of me. I'll see you here in a couple of weeks for training number 2.